right, Bill, we want to get started. My pleasure to introduce Dan O'Connell. Danny and I go back to around the early late 90s?
Late 90s.
Danny was one of my players at Bates. You're not going to find, fellas, a bigger advocate for football in our state, not only as a coach, but also as an administrator. Some of the things they've done last year and this year really have taken the game in a positive direction. Okay, we've got some issues with disparity and talent or whatever ability in conferences, and the creative scheduling these guys came up with allowed programs that were struggling a little bit to play a more competitive schedule. It also allows schools that were playing. I'm going to use Portland as an example. We knew going into this year we were going to be pretty good. Well, the year before, we played 4 or 5 programs that really, they were struggling. And it doesn't do us any good. Even though we tried to keep the score down, we played one school, in the middle of the second quarter, it was 35-0. We spent more time during the week trying to, how are we going to substitute, than we did game plan. You know going into that, and that doesn't do anybody any good. This year, the number of blowouts were reduced to a minute. There's always going to be a few, but it also gave, and I'll use Lewis as an example, program that was down a little bit, and they had a competitive schedule and allowed those kids to feel good about themselves. I talked to Dennis Walton down at Biddeford. They went in going 500. I talked over a beer. He goes, yes. I go, your coach doing better. He goes, our kids think they're good. He goes, we're really not. Okay, just being honest. He's a football guy, but they got better. The kids believe that they're 500. They're good. They're better, and that's what it's all about. You get kids feeling good about themselves, then they're gonna get better. But all of a sudden they look at this and go, shit, we play, and we might go the first 5 games and not score a point. That makes it really challenging. So Danny, thank you very much, man. Thank you. Danny,
Thanks, guys. First, I'm glad you're here. I wish, and I'll get into why in a second, but I wish back in 2003 when I started coaching that something like this was going on. Now, it probably was. Quite frankly, I didn't have the first damn clue what I was doing. I thought I did, right? Like every coach. Doesn't matter what level you start at. Doesn't matter what program you're in. When you start, you're the best damn coach there ever was, and you're going to be the next Vince Lombardi. Right? We all go through that. I'm going to win every game. I'm going to be the best coach there is. I took over at John Babs when they were 0-48. They were getting ready to cancel the program. So they scraped the bottom of the barrel, took the only fool that would go there and coach and said, here you go, here's a whistle, good luck. We lost. I was convinced big, loudmouth, Bangor guy was going to go into Class C football and kick everyone's ass. We were going to do it the Bangor way. I knew better than everybody else. First game we went up to Foxcroft Academy and lost 700-0. Hold on. Yeah, they just scored again. I was like, oh, I got a little work to do. The best part was, the next week, we went to Maranacook, and they were just not very good, fledgling program in a much better place now, and we won 13-6. Threw an interception on the goal line on the screen for a 95-yard return for a touchdown, and my brother, who's 9 months and 6 days younger than me, walked up to me, punched me in the chest, and said, if we throw the goddamn ball on the goal line again, I'm leaving. We punched it in with 2 minutes to go by running it. We win the game. The next week, we were very fortunate enough to get a win against one of my dear friends, and now my offensive coordinator, Haggy Pratt, was at Dexter at the time. At John Babs, we were 2-1. And I was New Rockney. Holy shit, I was the best coach that had ever lived. And for about 3 or 4 years, I lived off that. But I had no idea what I was doing. I was faking it. I was 24 years old. I worked and owned a nightclub in Bangor. For any of you that are familiar with the Bangor area, I was running Benjamin's at the time. So on Friday and Saturday nights after games, I was up way too late doing foolish things. And then I was waking up too late, getting ready to sweep the floor, take the beer order in, and then go to practice. And I was completely doing it by the ass of my pants. But I was faking it because I was stealing from everybody. We ran practice like I did at Bangor High School. I did the O-line drills that I did with Skip Capone. I had terminologies that I stole from Jack Cosgrove. So everything the coaches are saying to you is 100% true. You might get a kick out of what I have to say today, but you're not going to learn anything new, because I didn't invent any of it. I think I'm pretty good at two things: running my mouth and convincing you that it's a good idea. And that makes me a good football coach, because I got to take 30 to 35 kids every year that don't know what they're doing at John Bass Memorial High School, with no feeder program to speak of, and a bunch of kids that have never played before, and convince them that they're good enough, smart enough, and tough enough to play the greatest game on earth, and we have to believe it now. That I think I'm pretty good at. If you want to get on the grease board, I'm just okay. You want to scheme it up and block it, I could probably help you do that. If you want to talk about the intricacies of the footwork and the triple option quarterback play, I'm not your guy. I can get a D lineman in a stance, and I can get him to fire out because I knew what bothered me as an offensive player. But if you want to talk about the intricacies of going from zone to man coverage in the defensive backfield, I can hire somebody else to do that. One, they run too much. I'm a career lineman. And two, I just don't know it. So somebody's got to help me with it. And that's how I attack everything. When Coach Warren talks about having good people around you, it is vital. While we're on that topic, I would also encourage the head coaches in the room to hire people that don't want your job right now. They may want it later. They may be young and want to be the head coach someday. They may have already been a head coach and don't want to do that anymore. But don't hire people that want your job. Because human nature is to be divisive if you covet something that your brother has. That's hard to do, right? You got to find good people that are available, have a schedule in football that is unlike any other. We're going to talk about those duties outside of the X's and O's. And then you got to bring them all together and get them to agree on something. Well, good luck, right? We can't agree on what sandwiches to order, for Christ's sakes. How are we going to agree how to beat Foxtrot? It takes a lot of work. But don't get it twisted. As I go through what's on my phone today, none of it's mine. I'm just good at telling the story. And I'm okay with that, because if nothing, I'm pretty self-aware. So let's try it. Duties that don't make the field. Coach Plant and Coach Moran knocked it out of the park. Coach Plant even took my friggin' joke. You know when he put the one-liner up there at the end, I'm out of here, that was my friggin' joke. So he stole it from me. Coach, you're not lying. They're gonna do it to you. Dean Plant did it to me today. But he just won the state championship in 2 sports, so guess what? My happy ass will stand over here and say, good job, Dean. Because I'm gonna at least be humble. I didn't do a PowerPoint because after I looked at the list, I wasn't sure what Coach Capone was going to cover, or Coach Weiss if he had been here. Now, for those of you that haven't heard from Coach Weiss before, those of you that have will agree with me. Love him or hate him, he's entertaining. He's smart as a whip even though he plays it off, and he can coach the hell out of football. So we missed him today, and if you haven't seen him, get his information from Coach and have a conversation with him. You won't be the same, I promise. But it'll be worth your time, because it's entertaining as hell at a minimum, but very educational as well. But when I looked at the docket of who was speaking, I'm like I just told you, what the hell am I going to say that's going to move the needle with these guys after these legends talk? So if I put together a PowerPoint, I would have been like, yeah, you already talked about that, talked about that, talked about that. So I spent the whole morning in the back nodding, going, oh, yeah, gonna take that out, gonna take that out. Sudden change. Football at its finest. I know Monday we have practice at 3:30. And I know by 3:32, something is gonna affect me that's gonna piss me off and drive me completely off my schedule. Because I'm a big baby, first. And second, because no matter what you plan, never happens that way, especially in football. Coach Pratt's our offensive coordinator. He gives me a script every week before the game. These are the first couple plays we're going to run. By play 4, we're swearing at each other and screaming, that didn't work because that kid sucks. And out goes the script. Now, we've talked all day that you don't talk to kids like that, and I never would. I swear. No, I shouldn't. But, in all seriousness, and I'll get to swearing at the kids in a minute, we don't do that, but we do get on each other when it doesn't work. Very routinely, not very routinely, does it work? Right, guys? You all practice all week. You put in all the time. Oh, I got it. We're going to play Edward Little this week. We're going to stop the tailback because we're going to kick his ass. We're going to be in the A gap, and on the first play, the linebacker's in the B gap. There he goes. That's not how we planned it. Now what do we do? And that's the best part about football because that's life. People say to me all the time, how can you balance being an AD and a football coach and being involved in these associations and all that stuff? You can't. It's never over. But if you resign yourself to that, yeah, it's not all teddy bears and rainbows every day, and I'll talk about my wife and family in a second. You'll understand how I outkicked my coverage in that department. Well, I outkicked my coverage because my coverage is never very good. No one ever signed me ever kick enough. But the point is, it's never done. All the duties that don't make the field are what makes you a coach. So, taking over a program that was over 48, leading to a state title, great. Learning how to become a man through the game of football, way more powerful. And then becoming a head coach and realizing that the job is never done is the best thing that's ever happened to me, besides my wife and kids. And that's a fact. And if it's that way for you guys, I'm happy. If you're not there yet, get there. Because that's when it really, really pays off for you. You know, can't see. Used to be a young coach. Somebody said to me the other day, how long have you been coaching? And I was like, holy shit. 20 years. I've been the head football coach at John Baptist. Went by like this. I used to be a good young coach. Now I'm just another old loudmouth has-been, and you guys are lucky enough to hear me talk today. Enough BS about me and that stuff, though. I just want to say something. I'm so lucky through football. I am the head football coach and the athletic director at John Baptist. 20 years ago, I was an assistant under the worst head coach that's ever coached. He's an amazing guy. If he was sitting here, he'd say, man, I did a bad job. He was a wrestling coach, got forced into the job because the head coach left in June. The athletic director, whose son was a childhood friend of mine, sent him to see me at the bar on a Tuesday. I'm sweeping the floor, taking in the beer order, here he comes. He's got a braided ponytail down the middle of his back, and I thought he was coming in to play open mic night. He said, hey, is Dan O'Connell here? I'm like, oh yeah, you want to play tonight? He was like, actually, I do play the ukulele, but I'll get back to you on that. I said, all right. And he was like, I'm the new football coach at John Baptist. And I was like, oh, okay. He says, Mike Thomas sent me down here because he thought you might be able to give me some insight on some people that could coach in the area and you might even like to help. And I was like, okay. So we sit down. And I said, Rob, what do you need? He said, well, I know where I want the ball to go. I have no idea how to get it there. And on defense, I want the kids to run and tackle the guy with the ball. And I was like, well, that's a good start. Where do I fit in? He's like, well, if you could get me a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator, you could do the other one. All right. Never coached a day. Never thought I would coach. I was out of school by 3 years. I had been to Florida, didn't really like it down there. And this guy came in and said, come coach with me. Buddy of mine, and I decided we would do it. We went and made a 300-page playbook. Offense, defense, special teams, color-coded, rubbed together the only two dimes we had to order a program in 2003 and gave it to him. He never asked our opinion the rest of the year. Never said a word to us about strategy, didn't want to meet, didn't give a rat's ass about anything we thought. Wouldn't swap film. Everybody in the league hated him and they wanted to beat us by 1,000. And then they beat us by 1,000. Over, and over. The end of the year, last game of the year, I think we had thrown 2 forward passes. Didn't complete either of them. We're playing Orono, and it's for the second time of the year, and Orono was down. It was closed, 4th quarter, and I mean the whole community's at the line of scrimmage. The band director, the cheerleaders, the concession stand workers are all blitzing the A gap, and we're in the T, and we're hammering the A gap, and we are getting destroyed. So I said, I've had enough. Rob, just fake it one time and throw a pop pass to the tight end. Just once. He's like, yeah. So he calls it. Our quarterback, who has written he's a writer now, has written a nationally acclaimed article in the New York Times, some of you might have seen it, it's entitled The Worst Quarterback That Ever Played. It's gained some national attention. It was a great story, and he went over all 4 years, and this was his last game. Well, he takes a snap, puts the fake down, and before he can even get his head up, he's about to get killed. So he does what anybody would out of self-preservation and mostly out of fear. He sprints to his right. And as he's sprinting, here they come, he backs up, lets it fly. It's a hand grenade. The middle linebacker from Orono, is a good player, slides right in front of our sideline, catches the interception, and flips the head coach the ball. And says, "Good night, coach," and jogs off. Well, Rob loses his mind, rightfully so. Now Rob is, I don't know, he wasn't very tall. 5, 6, maybe. Easy. I know, I was thinking of you, Aaron. I'm trying to be nice. He says, he comes walking down the sideline and he gets right in my face, and I'm petrified of him. Did you see the arms on him? So I'm going to stay over here when I do this. That's why we don't throw the football. I was like, so I walked away. Buddy of mine, Dave Yo, who Haggy knows well, said, just come down here and leave him alone. We end up losing. We get on the bus. And he gets on the bus and he's like, are we good? And I said, no, Rob, we're not good, but we're not going to do it in front of the kids. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Long story short, he ends up getting fired. The AD at the time, same childhood friend, I say, Mike, do you think I should apply? And he was like, Dan, honestly, we need somebody with experience. We've had enough turnstile coaches. We need someone who's done this before. Maybe if you stay on as an assistant, maybe that'll work out. We'll go from there. I went in to the interview. He gave me that. He said, I'm going to give you an interview, but it doesn't look promising. I went into the interview, and I talked about my time at Bates College. 3 and 29 in 4 years. When I was a freshman at Bates, we had 28 kids in the freshman class. 5 of us played our last game together. 23 kids either quit, left the program, what have you. Now, there's all this Colby talk around here today. It makes me a little twitchy. But I will say this. In my 4 years at Bates, we split with one team. We beat Colby twice. My freshman year, we played him. We got beat. Jason Jabber had transferred from Maine. He looked like he was playing for the Giants. I'm a freshman. I'm like, oh, you're going to kill us. And he did. They destroyed us. Sophomore year, we were up 21-0. In a year that our running back won the rushing title, we didn't win a football game. Thank the D coordinator for that one. My junior year, things are changing. New assistant coach comes into town, figuratively because he'd always been there, and develops some semblance amongst chaos of football culture, and I know he hates that term. he started to create it. The next year, we get a brand new coach. Coach gets fired. Here I am, elected as a captain with no head coach. This man, you want to talk about being blessed to be around good people? I've told this story in a couple other venues. This man, I think if I held his feet to the fire, wanted to be the head coach, but I think he knew they were going in a different direction, and he didn't bat an eye. He did what football coaches do. He rolled his sleeves up, he kept us in the weight room, he recruited like a bastard. We had a great freshman class the following year when I was a senior, and it was all because of him. He got kids into that institution that never would have got a shot before that, and he kept the program together, and then, oh, by the way, didn't become the head coach, but stayed there for 25 years. So he's loyal to boot. Moral of the story, that description of his experience and mine through him got me to be a head coach. I am blessed to have been around people like that man. He won't like this, and I'm old enough now to bust his balls a little bit and joke with him a little bit. This is no joke. Please give that man a round of applause for doing what we're doing here today. That convinced John Babs that I should be the coach. No idea what I was doing. Got beat by 107 the first night, won 2 games, and I'm there for life. Now, fast forward 20 years, I'm also the AD at a place that I was completely foreign to me. And I grew up right down the street. Football has a funny way of dragging you into those things. Great people through football helped me become, I think, a decent head coach. Fast forward to the next one. When you coach football, I just said the job's never done. More importantly, you never know what the job is. It might be talking to a kid in study hall. Hey, Jimmy, gotta get your grades up, bud. Not only do we need you on Friday night, but you need to graduate. Hey, Jason, get your ass to practice. Where you been? Right? Hey, Billy, you did a great job last night leading those guys. Keep bringing that. And those are just the little things. That's before we talk about bringing what the emergency action plan is when a kid gets injured. That's before we talk about where are your contact slips. If somebody, I'm gonna pick on you guys at Lewiston for a minute. If you're on a bus and you're headed back from Bangor and somebody has an allergic reaction on the bus, do you know how to contact their parents? Can you put your hands on it now? And if you can't, you should. Do you have a med kit with an EpiPen? If you don't, you should. And we'll get into that in a second. All the people that I've come across in football are the reasons that I know any of these things. And it's a long list. I sent a text out to 15 ADs on a thread I have through the PVC. And I said, tell me the things that go beyond the X's and O's of any sport that drive you crazy about coaches. So I set us up. It was going to be pretty negative, right? I got 107 messages in about 12 minutes. So I'm going to read some of those to you in a minute. The list is long, right? Dean talked about it. Coach talked about it. Coach Mormon, I mean, they got PowerPoints. We could go on for 9 hours on the things that a coach should do that doesn't have anything else to do with drawing on a grease board. We'll never cover them all. But we'll try. So here goes. Just got a reminder, lacrosse schedules do. I'll let you know how it goes. Football coach and athletic director at John Babs. Classification Committee and liaison to the Football Committee for the Maine Principals Association. I'm the treasurer and the secretary of the Maine Football Coaches Association, a position I got through Coach Haley, who some of you may or may not know, legendary coach of Maine. He's actually, talk about humble and gracious. Coach Capone worked with him for 40 years doing the clinic, not quite 40, but. And Coach Capone came up with the idea a series of years back to name the Coach of the Year award for Coach Haley. Coach Capone did that because he thinks of others. That man got me started in these roles. I replaced John Moore. Now, when Mike Haley is telling me that him and Skip are running a clinic and I'm taking over John Moore on that board, I am shaking in my boots. I'm petrified. Right? I have been a football enthusiast since I was 5 years old, and these guys are legends. I don't belong here. Fake it till you make it. Convince people you know what you're talking about. Here I am.
You've done more in that role than I ever thought of doing.
Thank you, Coach, but I appreciate it. I'm on the board of Bangor Youth Football. I'm the president-elect of the PVC for next year. I know I look like I should be on the next one. The National Federation of High Schools Sports Medicine Advisory Committee as the representative of every coach in every sport in the country. That's me. I look like I should be on the sports medicine board, huh? Picture of health. National High School Football Coaches Alliance, and I am newly elected Vice President of the National Football Foundation, Howard Vandercy National Football Foundation Board, as the VP to John Wolfgram. Tomorrow I'm coming back to Lewiston to do my 14th pre-Lobster Bowl meeting in a row. What does all that mean? Not a damn thing without football. I wouldn't be on anything. And I certainly wouldn't be there without coaches who took the time with me to get there. So Coach Morin's running. Find a mentor, but please guys, be a mentor. Find one of those guys that the officials are talking about in the back to me saying, yeah, we want to put the young guys on the youth football and the middle school football, but those are the toughest guys to officiate because they're out of their minds. Take those guys under your wing. Make them a bona fide better part of your program. You'll be more successful, but so will the game. Because that's what happened for me. What does that mean for me as a coach? All of those initials. MFCA, NFA, HS, blah, blah, blah. Not a damn thing. Last year we were 4-4. The year before that we were 1-7. That's it. But I coached more in the last 2 years than I did when we were 11-1 in 2008 when the state championship. We're all a lot better coaches when we have better players. You got to show up and do the work, and when you're 4-4 and kids do things that they didn't think they could do, that's when you become a coach. Bruce Morris and Gabby Price at Bangor High School. Mark Harriman, Skip Capone, even a young Jason Bursey at Bates College. Coach Morin, we used to scrimmage Massabesic when I was a junior and a senior at the great Bangor High School. We drove down twice. And now I work with Coach Cosgrove and Coach Wolfgram. Coach Burgess was here earlier. In the Lobster Bowl, I've worked, I think, with as many good coaches as I could count. Coach Hathaway, Coach Lippert, Coach County, and on and on, Coach Perkins, on and on it goes. I think there are 4 duties as a coach that will encompass all of the things we could talk about not for 9 hours. We have a duty to coach. I have a sign in my office that says a good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life. Jack Cosgrove has stood before us over and over and over again and say football is one of the last makers of good young men and good women. Good young men and good young women. military service, first responders, and a bunch of other jobs that I'm not nearly tough enough to do are great also. But football for our kids is the closest thing in the next tier. It's been under attack a little bit. We have a duty to coach. We used to say, hate them all the same, right? In 1971, and you grabbed a kid by the face mask and dragged his ass all over the field, that was perceived as toughness and teaching kids a lesson. If you did that today, you'd be on the national news. You can't hate them all the same. You can't even treat them all the same. You got to treat them all fair. That's the difference. Find your niche teaching fairness, because you can't treat them all the same because they're not. You have a duty to plan, right? Practice, meet, practice, game, rinse, repeat. Meet, practice, game. Meet, practice, game. That's the easy part. All the things in the middle, you have to have a plan for. What are you going to do when the kids get out of school early? What are you going to do when the bus can't get here till 7? What are you going to do in your pregame? What time are you going to walk out? What time are you going to be there so the officials can tell you about how the game's going to go? Who's going to provide the meal? What time are the kids going to eat? Jimmy can't get here till 7 because he's got, true story, it's third year I was coaching, starting left guard came up to me and said, Coach, I can't go to the game tomorrow night, JV game. I said, why? He said, the 4th string on my cello broke and I have to get it fixed. I was like 27 and like peeling the skin off the side of my face. You said, what? Yeah, the 4th string on my cello broke. I have to get it fixed. We have a performance. I didn't plan for that. I didn't even know a cello had 4 strings. And this kid can't go to the game. And he's a prominent member of our JV team. You can't plan for that, but it's going to happen. Maybe not to you, but. You have a duty to communicate. You have to communicate with all the people that Coach Moore enlisted. Parents, players, obviously, administrators, teachers, secretaries and custodians. All of this was in my PowerPoint. You guys took it off. But it's imperative that you communicate. Officials, whomever you come across, you have to communicate with them, and it never ends. And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, you have a duty to be involved. You're going to spend more time with your kids than anybody else in their life. And it doesn't just happen in the fall. It doesn't just happen at practice. It certainly doesn't just happen in the games. It happens around the calendar. When you see people in the store, when you see people in the mall, especially in communities like Old Orchard Beach, like Coach Plant talked about. When you go in public, you are revered as the football coach. You have to own that, and you have to be involved. You have to go watch that kid who got his cello fixed perform in the concert. Even when the band director goes, hey coach, are you lost? No, I came to watch Ben. Oh, you have to do those things. And they don't put that in the playbook on the 3rd page of your offense. Lastly, and more importantly than anything, the best lesson my head coach in high school, Coach Bryce, taught me that I didn't get until I became a coach myself and long after. He said, every practice, okay, I think back to 1992, we didn't have acclimatization and in your underwear and then half a practice with your helmet on and then get all the way through. We had, hey, show up to a preseason camp that may or may not have been legal, and then have doubles, if not triples, on day 1, and oh, by the way, it's full pads. Good luck. He would rip us. He would throw us out of practice intentionally. He did all the things to push the right buttons. When I was a freshman, Bangor, we lost a Brewer in an exhibition game. By the time I was a senior, we were in 2 regional finals, and my brother's team the next year won a state game. He obviously knew what he was doing. But after every practice, all of the coaches, everyone, stood outside that locker room and shook our hands, no matter what happened. And he said, you can never control how they come to you. They could have had a bad day. They could have just broke up with their girlfriend. They might not have had anything to eat. All different ways, right? We all have different kids. But you can always, always affect how you send them away. And if you do nothing else to this day, Coach Pratt can attest, after every practice, we shake hands with the kids. COVID and no COVID, we were doing fist bumps and we were, we send our kids away feeling good about themselves and letting them know we care. Even if we're pissed, I'll say, Jimmy, you gotta be better tomorrow. But he knows that I'm expecting him. And that's the role of a coach, and that's the duties they don't talk about. Communicate with your athletic directors, communicate with your parents, with your players. More than anything, you're damn lucky to do this. I know I am. Keep doing it, keep getting involved, and keep doing the best job on the planet, being a football coach. Thanks, guys.
Coach Bill is going to take a couple minutes to get started. We'll finish up with the last talk today. Again, making sure your kids go away feeling good. There's going to be times in practice. I know the last couple of years of pool, and I would maybe blast a kid for whatever reason, and